This episode is brought to you by Nespresso. Gift magical mornings with Nespresso Virtuo Pop. Compact and stylish, Virtuo Pop is made to meet every morning coffee craving. From espresso to coffee, hot or iced, at the click of a button. And celebrate the season with Nespresso's limited edition coffee flavors. Sweet almond and hibiscus, cinnamon and candied tamarind, and festive double espresso. Magic in the making. Shop the holiday gift collection exclusively at Nespresso.com.
This podcast is brought to you by TeamTrade, a digital solution that helps you hire, optimize, and retain employees. Using psychometric assessments to identify more than 100 professional mindset traits, it gives instant reports you can use to build high-performing teams. Get 2 free profiles today, no commitment, no credit card required, at teamtrait.com. TeamTrait.com. Welcome to the Manage Smarter podcast with hosts C. Lee Smith and Audrey Strong. We're glad you're here for discussions on new ways to manage smarter, hire, develop, and retain talent, improve results, and propel team performance to new heights. This is the Manage Smarter podcast.
We've never talked about buy-in on this show, Lee. And, I was watching some of those lazy girl videos on TikTok and Instagram, and their idea of what the definition of buy-in is to perform at a work level that's just enough on your team that you don't get fired. That's their idea of buy-in.
Yeah.
My idea of buy-in is when you give me KPIs that I exceed them to please you. So we don't even know what the definition
Well,
really
my idea of buy-in is that when you've got a mission or a purpose that's clear to everyone and everyone feels like there is value and a reason, a rationale for the work that they're doing that feeds into that goal that they can, and when they can attach then what they do on a day-to-day basis to that goal, I think that's when you have a greater likelihood for buy-in to occur.
Yeah, but how do the different workplace generations respond to your explanation of the why? That's for our guests as well.
That's why we've got a good guest to tell us that. Yes.
I'm not doing it. Anyway, welcome to Manage Smarter, everyone. We're so glad you're here. My name is Audrey Strong. I'm the Senior Vice President of Communications here at Sales Fuel.
I'm C. Lee Smith. I am the CEO and founder of Sales Fuel.
All right. So Dave Garrison is our esteemed guest today. He's a business strategist, leadership coach, co-founder of Garrison Growth, and author of a book, The Buy-in Advantage: Why Employees Stop Caring and How Great Leaders Inspire Everyone to Give Their All. And Dave, you say this can really affect the bottom line. So what is the definition of it in the first place? Buy-in.
So that's a great question. Thank you. So let me just give you an analogy. For those people listening and viewing in the US, most of us have been to a football game at a high school on Friday nights, Friday Night Lights, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've been there. Do you see the enthusiasm? Do you see the energy? It's not just the kids, it's the parents as well. And there's socializing, there's community, there's enthusiasm. And then Monday morning, those same people go to the parking lot and that person is left in the car or left in the bus or left on the metro, and another person shows up at the office. And so I think, as Lee kind of alluded to, organizations that have buy-in, it's very clear the answer to the question, why bother? Why is it worth it? It's very clear. It is known to all, and it's always of the heart. It always is attached to emotion and worth doing. So making money is never a reason to do it. Of course, I expect to be paid. And of course, I understand a business is about making money or a nonprofit about a cause. But why bother doing it? Great leaders have led their teams in the discovery and then communicate over and over again as they make decisions and set priorities and reinforce what we call in the book compelling purpose. It's the answer to why bother. So engagement looks like more like Friday Night Lights than going to the DMV or going to the dentist for a root canal. Those are very different kinds of experience.
And motivation is so much more powerful when it's intrinsic versus extrinsic, right? So that is what gets people then to actually get jazzed and get juiced about, coming into work on Monday, and you don't have the Sunday scaries.
Or being sent to the gulag.
I can tell you why you ought to be excited, and I'll tell you what the purpose is, and I'll tell you. It's like leaders don't tell. Leaders ask, leaders listen.
Mm-hmm.
This reminds me of one of Audrey's favorite phrases. You know which one I'm referring to?
No, I'm afraid, but go ahead.
You say, when I want your opinion, I'll give it to you.
Yeah, I'll give it to you. Yeah.
I love it.
And so yeah, so why write this book now? I mean, it's kind of a perennial issue, but you say that there's actually a crisis kind of in 2025 with all this. What changed?
There is a couple of things changed. First of all, let's be real. For 30 years, Gallup has done the surveys to say that employees basically are not engaged. Our engagement rate's kind of stuck at 30%. And to me, that's a leadership failure and a waste of human potential. It is a shame. For businesses, it's a shame because they're not capitalizing on human capital they've invested in. If they bought a piece of machinery, they'd say, what's the ROI? But we've missed that on people. And so what's changed are actually three things. One is you talked about how to talk to different generations. Interestingly, Generation Z gets a lot of knocks, just as the generation before and before that.
The youngest generation always takes the arrows. Yeah.
You know, if they really cared, Lee, if they were willing to work hard, they just don't get it, whatever. Every generation shows up differently. But what's interesting about Z is, yes, money is important. Also important is impact. Having my voice heard. Also important is purpose, doing something worth doing. And third is aligning with the values of an organization, which means there's an opportunity for leaders to show up differently to really reinforce the values that people exhibit and practice, to understand and communicate what the purpose, the why bother is, and to then develop techniques to listen to people's opinion without bringing the organization to a halt. So number one, the trend that changed, Gen Z in the workforce. Trend two, during COVID, we all had a lot of time to contemplate questions like, what's work about in my life? Why bother doing it? Is it worth it for me to get on the metro and ride 45 minutes, or to drive a half hour to work, or to whatever? Are those trade-offs worth it? So people are looking for different things from work than they were before. And the third is the uncertainty right now. If we did an index of uncertainty, I'd suggest to you it's up and to the right and off the chart. Because we don't know, is there a recession coming, not a recession coming, tariffs on, tariffs off, will I have a job, will I not have a job? So those three things have collided to create a buy-in crisis.
Well, that leads me into one of the questions that I wanted to ask you, which is, how do you envision technological advancements impacting the future strategic leadership? And I'm specifically talking about AI. So that's another one that's also causing a great deal of consternation and uncertainty.
Can you tell me about the consternation? Is that employee consternation, leader consternation? How do you think about that?
Well, I mean, among leaders, for example, I mean, it is one of the top three worries that they have in the next 2 years that they have to address. And of course, you have inflation, cost of goods. You have hiring, trying to find and keep good people. But
Right.
AI is actually right up there, tied with number two. And in terms of, the line workers and everything like that, I mean, you do have a small percentage, it's smaller than most people would imagine, that are worried that AI is going to take their jobs.
Right.
But they're also just trying to figure out how to use AI, what corporate wants them to do with AI and what they don't want them to do with AI. And there's not a lot of clarity there. And so they're kind of left, like in the Wild West, just trying to figure it out for themselves. And that's
So
kind of unsettling.
two principles that we talk about in the Buy-in Advantage book is, one, the people closest to the work know best how to do it better. A second principle, not in the book, but I believe to be true, is the younger people are, the better they understand technology like AI, because it's not a change for them. It's just like, oh, okay, there's
Right.
AI. And so we talk about a process in the book about collective genius and getting everybody's best thinking, where the leader's role is not to give the answer. The leader's role is to ask the question. So, for example, what the leader can do is say, look, I'd like to have a policy on AI that will help us leverage it, but we're all playing by the same rules and have a common understanding in our company. And my criteria, that's my desired outcome. My criteria is, I want it to be a policy to be easily understood. I want it to apply to everyone. I want us to have an ability to communicate it and teach it easily. It's simple enough to understand. So with that as my outcome and criteria, I would like you all to spend overnight thinking about what would a policy look like, and then go through a process of collective genius to allow the team to co-create. In the book, we call that done with, not done to. An alternative is, I've got a great idea. Lee, Audrey, Here's what I think we ought to do on AI. What do you think? Well, if you've already told me it's a great idea, you've just cut me out. There is no buying. It's just like, whatever, sure.
Mhm.
Where do you want to
Yeah,
go to
the
lunch?
stakeholders really have to have a hand in the decision making, right? I mean, so rather than just taking an order or how do I execute this or something like that, I want to have some say in, hey, is this even a good idea? What's the need for that? What form should it take? In the case of AI, is like, should this be a flexible policy because AI is always changing, and
Yeah.
our policy can be outdated overnight. Slight exaggeration, but what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Those are criteria you just outlined. And in the
Hmm.
collective genius process, I'd invite the team to add other criteria. And I'll tell you a story about a leader in the book, Jeff Edison, who's a great CEO. And we were doing a strategic planning session. His leadership team is in the room. He comes in from a board meeting and he says, "Hey, before we get started, I'm thinking about adding another member to the senior team." And I'm watching the faces of the people in the room. And they're like, "Well, wait a minute. What's the matter with us?" It's kind of like a new kid arrives at home. And so I said, "Jeff, have you thought about this a lot?" And Jeff is one of the most thoughtful leaders and effective leaders I know. I knew the answer would be yes. He said, "Yes." I said, "Okay, well, what did you consider? What was on your checklist? What was on your criteria list as you thought about the right person?" Because he had somebody in mind. He said, "Well, somebody who's thoughtful, who's well respected by others, and thinks differently than us." And I said, "Great." I said to the team, "What else would you add to this list?" And they added 3 or 4 other criteria. And then I said to the team, I said, "Okay, so let's use this process. Take a minute on your own and write down the names of people who meet all these criteria." And then we went around and they listed probably 10 or 12 people. And I said, "Okay, Jeff, why don't you tell us who it is you had in mind?" He said, "No, I want to think about it some more," because he was humble enough to tap into the collective genius before he shared the "I've got a great idea." And that
Mhm.
model of desired outcome and criteria is one that has helped propel them year after year after year. And that's a kind of leadership style that generates the buy-in advantage.
The hard metrics you want to talk about too, because you say there are hidden costs to this, that show up when you start to have a more widespread problem, but also turnover, missed targets, and overall poor performance and productivity. What are some of
Yeah.
the other things?
Yeah, Audrey, the challenge for leaders is that the CFO doesn't quite report the numbers that have to do with the engagement issue. And what we see when there's an engagement problem with things like meetings starting late, meetings running over, not everybody attending meetings, meetings not getting to the point. We see things like absenteeism go up and turnover go up. We see things like missed objectives. We see things like employee burnout and turnover because they're constantly having to take on more because people left the organization and they're spending this endless cycle interviewing new people. And then I hear leaders tell me, "I don't have time to spend on people and buy-in." And I say, "Well, you have time to do interviews and re-interviews. So isn't that interesting?" And so the measures are things like turnover, and there are also engagement surveys to do. The costs are bottom line costs. And let me tell you, a leader came up to me and said, "Look, I've squeezed everything I could out of this business in terms of expenses. I've taken everything out. I don't know what else to do." I said, "What's your turnover?" He said, "It's like 60%." And I
Wow.
said, "Focus on the turnover and reduce that using the methods in the book." And he did that. And a year later, he said, "I was able to generate another $1 million because our turnover went down." I said, "What did that look like?" He said, "People had more time in their job and more experience so they could ask better questions. We created an environment of trust so they can contribute their knowledge, and we do this together." So it was done with instead of done to.
Mhm.
And so I think the challenge is nobody knocks on our door and says, "You better work on engagement." They knock on our door and say, "We've got this problem. The metrics are down, the sales are down." And we say, "Well, let's raise commissions or let's do a new sales program," which is great, but we might be missing maybe our people actually have some really good insight on what we could do better, differently, double down on, or stop doing.
Yeah, that's something I'm a big believer in too. It's like what happens is, the staff, they get to be able to read each other's minds because they've worked together for so long. So you spend less time explaining and re-explaining because I pretty much know where everybody's coming from and everybody else knows where everybody else is coming from. And, we developed a shared language, if you will, within the
Yes.
company, and we all get that. So there's a tribalism that goes with that. And that kind of leads me to wonder, like you say that there are 7 ingredients that are needed, to build a culture of buy-in. So where should leaders start? What are a couple of those ingredients?
I would start, in chapter 3 of the book, we start with a team assessment. Here, Lee, here's the deal. I know this, but I don't always remember that I've got a huge blind spot behind me. It's what we call our 6. I
Mhm.
can't see what's in my 6, but you can, and others can. So what we want to do is begin with an assessment of the current situation collectively. So I'd have each team member read chapter 3, take the assessment, write down their own notes, and then compare notes. Where are we now, and where is our lowest hanging fruit on generating buy-in? That's step 1. But to do that, you've got to have the belief as a leader that all of us are smarter than any of us. You've got to have a belief that together we can come up with a better solution than I can, even though I have more experience and I have the title and I know everything there is to know. Even though that's all true, I have to acknowledge I've got a blind spot, and we all do. But collectively, we can come up with better solutions. So I'd start with that team assessment, and then I'd pick the low hanging fruit, and then I'd pick the techniques out of the book and say, hey, we can start doing this. So harness the power of collective genius
Mhm.
is one of the 7 steps. Another is that drama-free problem-solving
Oh,
system I
yes.
described earlier in the Jeff Edison story. It wasn't a debate. Should it be Sally or Jim who joins the team? No wasted time on debate. We're going to go through a very disciplined process and we're going to come up with solutions, and then collectively we'll pick the best solution. Another thing we see, third, focus on questions, not answers. When people bring you an idea, don't say, well, that will never work, or I'm not sure. Say, that's really interesting. Can you tell me what it is that would do for us? Can you tell me what else you considered? Can you let me know, how did you know that was a good idea? And you'll learn how people think, and you'll be able to then use your experience to inform your questions of them, as opposed to telling them what they should do. So those are 3
Mhm.
examples.
And I had an executive coach that taught me one thing that I was not doing at the time, which is before you do all that is to start with telling them that you appreciate the fact that they brought the idea to you so as to encourage them and make them feel psychologically safe to continue bringing good ideas rather than just trying to jump in and quiz them about what they're saying or trying to fix a problem or something like that. It really
Yeah,
has to start with that first.
great advice. Great
Yeah.
advice. One of the other things we say is human beings, not human doings. And
Hmm.
that human being is an appreciation. You know what? You didn't have to bring in an idea. I really appreciate you took the time and you were comfortable enough to present this. It's really important to me because it reflects our value of fill in the blank.
We've got a few minutes left. GarrisonGrowth.com is your website, Dave. And again, everybody, the book is called The Buy-in Advantage: Why Employees Stop Caring and How Great Leaders Inspire Everyone to Give Their All. And so, Lee, I'm going to give you the last question, sir.
All right. So, what is one thing about strategic buy-in that you believe that some managers would disagree with?
Yeah, Lee, that's a great question. And it's probably slow down to speed up, because we all have a sense of urgency.
Oh,
We need to
that's a
make
good one.
decisions and get
Yeah.
stuff done. When you slow down to include everyone, then you have the opportunity to generate buy-in, and you'll get much better results if everybody's on board as opposed to the few who will follow you. One of the leaders who inspired me to write this book told the story of, he said, I feel like I'm climbing up a mountain and I'm breaking all this ground, and I turn around and my team is way far down the mountain. So that assessment that I referred to earlier in chapter 3 is actually available free. It's available free at buyinbook.com, BUYIN book.com, so that you can share it with your team. You can take the assessment and get started and recognize that that's slowing down to include everyone. That's slowing down to speed up, Lee.
Yeah, that's that's a struggle of mine. Audrey will tell you. We have a saying in this company, which is it's the speed of Lee, and it's like, and so everyone needs this, the hustle and struggle to try to keep up, and when really what I need to do is kind of slow it down a little bit and allow them opportunity to catch up and get on the bus with me.
Yeah, but and I don't know if you know this, David, at Sales Fuel, we have employees that have been here 20 plus year. I mean, Lee is a master of buy-in, and we had a triage meeting this morning to go over the work pipeline for my department because he allows me to come to him and go, whoa, take your foot off the accelerator there, and we can untangle this train wreck of our pipeline. And he doesn't say, I'm not taking a triage meeting with you. You just figure it out, but to his credit, he's a great leader and he knows that he does that, and it's all good.
Well, first of all, thank you for that. Second of all, though, I think another example, though, to what Dave was saying today that I thought we did really well is that, we're looking at currently at the time of this recording, looking at adding a digital marketing person. So I came to the table and said, okay, here's what I'm looking for. And then we allowed every member, of the marketing team down to the graphic artist or whatever to chime in and kind of say, okay, well, here's what I think is important. And so what happened is that we had the crowdsourcing, or what you call the collective wisdom, and we all together then defined what the criteria for the new hire was going to be. And that's what we're looking for now.
Awesome. And that allows everyone then to participate in the creation, because we're all doing it from the same place. Lee, that's a great example.
It was shocking how aligned we were too. Even I was like, wow, this is going to be easy.
It wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. But we were able to read each other's minds because we've been together for so long. So that helps.
Exactly. Dave, this is great. Great tangible tips. We sure appreciate it. Congratulations on the book. And thanks for coming on the show. We sure appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend on iTunes, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more great information at salesfuel.com.
This episode is brought to you by Marqeta. When it comes to your payments provider, you can't afford to compromise. Marqeta's modern payment solutions flex with your business without the trade-offs. Stable and agile, secure and innovative, scalable and configurable. If they say you can't have it all, don't believe them. Your business demands more. Choose a payments provider that delivers more. Choose Marqeta. Visit marqeta.com/Spotify to learn more.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.